This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Today, and I think these next two games are going to be very interesting for the Browns to figure out what's going to happen for the rest of the year, right? Because we're still kind of in this limbo area. And I understand that beating Pittsburgh was kind of like a great moment, but we're waiting to see right now for the next few weeks. We're waiting to see, hey, was that winning against Pittsburgh going to be like kind of the peak of the season and the last kind of thing that we've done that we felt really good about before the season kind of peters out eventually because we don't have quarterback play? Or is it going to be the start of another ball rolling downhill, right? We just don't know where we're headed with the whole DTR experience. And because we don't know, we're kind of defaulting to some of the same stuff that we've always defaulted to, right? Like I point out this all the time, or at least all this week. The rhetoric around DTR sounds eerily similar to the rhetoric around like Jacoby Brissett after week one. He needs to be pulled. We can't score points this way. We're averaging 5 yards a target. He can't throw the ball downfield. And then, like, as the weeks went on, these things became non-concerns. Now, Jacoby Brissett's a veteran player who's been in the league for a while, who had a large body of work that made me very confident that they were clearly executing a game plan versus the Panthers, so that was going to change going forward. DTR is not the same thing. He doesn't have a large body of work in the NFL. But if you look at what he's been able to do in practice and preseason, and also just his college tape, that would suggest that there's a lot more to get out of DTR than what they used on Sunday, and that they only use what they got out of DTR on Sunday just so they can get out of Sunday with the best chance of winning, which was to not turn the ball over. Now, it might be a similar plan, but executed in a different way this week, right? Because the similar plan part of this is, hey, Denver has had a ridiculous amount of turnovers in the last few games, and you don't want to give them those turnovers because they proved that, hey, if you give them the turnovers, they could play good enough offense with Russ on that other side to take advantage and win, right? But I don't think that the turnovers are of the same nature of Pittsburgh, right? Where Pittsburgh gets those turnovers because they force them and they blitz you to death and you ain't going to have enough time to throw. I don't think that's the case. Now, I think if you're the Browns, you still want DTR getting rid of that ball in rhythm. You still want him with a 2.5 second pocket time at most, because you want him working in structure and rhythm on time. You don't want him patting, standing around, trying to figure out what he wants to do with the football. You want him in rhythm, on time, getting rid of the football, being confident of where he has to be. But I want to point my target to a larger conversation of what does the best case scenario look like for this team and what do the Browns have to achieve. And let's be honest, on the offensive side of this ball, in order to get the best case regular season ending scenario for this team, right? Now, I would say anything above 10 wins is clearly in best case scenario territory. Whether you win all of these last games and get to 14 or something like that, or if you just get to 12 or 11, either way, we're going to be in best case scenario land above 10 wins. 10 wins to 9 wins, you're not pissed about it. You're hoping you make the playoffs, but you're going to be thinking, man, what if these injuries didn't happen, right? Like that's going to put you in the what if range if you are at 10 or 9 wins. And then obviously anything below that, which is 8 or 7, they just win one game down the stretch or no games down the stretch, then, I think people are going to be furious, right? You lose 1 out of 6 games or 0 out of 7, people ain't going to be all understanding about that, even if it is an understandable reason why it occurred. I know from just how football fans react in general, ain't nobody about to sit here and be like, well, we lost all 7 games at the end of the season, but Yeah, ain't nobody doing that, right? That's not a actual reaction people have. Even if the record looks fine at the end of the day, people gonna be in panic zone, talking about firing the coach, firing the GM. We already know how things would go if that happens. So that's obviously worst case scenario, right? So worst case scenario, you win 1 or 2 games. Well, you win 1 game or 1 or 2 games for the rest of the year. Well, no, not even that. You just win 1 game or no games for the rest of the year. That's the worst case scenario. The okay case scenario where it's gonna be like, hey man, what this season could have been if we would have had health, right? If we would have had Nick Chubb, Deshaun Watson. That's if we get to 9 or 10, right? You win a couple of games down the stretch, but you don't win a ton. If you get to 11 and above, we talk about coach of the year. We talking about all this greatness stuff, and we're going to be hyping up guys all off season. We're going to be through the roof, right? If we get to that amount of wins. So that's where I would categorize the kind of best case scenarios. Now, what do I think they need to get to that best case scenario tier for the rest of this season? I kind of pointed this out with the goals for DTR, right? And I think for him, you want to get him above 235 total yards a game, utilize him as a runner as much as a passer. And I don't know if I've gotten to talk about this in detail, and maybe I have to get my hands on some UCLA all 22 tape at some point if it becomes warranted, because I don't think people understand how good of an athlete DTR is. And maybe this is just my projection onto y'all because I didn't watch a lot of Pac-12 stuff. So I was just watching like kind of the cut-ups of his throws coming out of college and not necessarily the athletic stuff. I got to look at that athletic stuff from DTR. I was like, oh, he's a different athlete than I thought, right? You hear guys coming out of college are good athletes, and usually that means they run like a 4.8 or 4.7, and they could scoot a little bit. They could be a scramble guy, like kind of like a Baker Mayfield or a Bryce Young. You kind of think about that, like that range of athleticism. Nah, man, this is different with DTR. He is a true athlete, like a direct run quarterback athlete. 4.55 40, like true quickness. Good athlete, great burst. He has a great 10-yard split. I believe one of the best ones ran at the combine that year. He's not a big dude. He's around 190, 195, but the zip on the football is there. He threw like a 68 or something mile per hour football at the combine. And I think there is something interesting with DTR because I think the issues he has throwing the ball downfield, I think he's just throwing the football too hard. Like, to be dead honest with you, like, I just don't think he has great control or great feel yet for how to get that ball down the field. Because for somebody who can throw as hard as he can, it doesn't make sense that he can't throw super long with accuracy because he's so accurate with so much speed. Like, he throws a football like a pitcher, basically, on these like slants and on these things minus 30, well, in the 30-yard range. But whenever it gets plus 30, it gets kind of wonky and weird and it doesn't look good. I think it's because he just tries to throw it too hard. I don't know. But I think he should be capable of it with a lot of work, but that's obviously not going to be something that happens this year. But again, best case scenario, you keep the run game at above 145 yards a game. And I think the most important things here, right? The Browns defense continues to play at the level that they're playing at. They do that, they'll be fine. And that the Browns offense continues to lead the league in time of possession. And that the Browns get their turnover ratio to -2. Right now, I believe they're at -5 or 6. If they get that down to 2, that means that they're really going in the right. If they get it to even, but if it gets above -2, they're at a really good place. And I think that if they hit those marks, they have a really good chance to hit a best case scenario, and not just a best case scenario for the hand you've been dealt. Let's be honest. We'd be happy with 11 wins or 12 wins, even if everybody was fully healthy. I mean, like, we wouldn't be mad about that. So if you can get that total with DTR and PJ playing games with Deshaun in and out and no Nick Chubb and no tackles for a period of time, and all this turmoil on offense, and who knows, maybe you finally start to get a little bit healthy towards the end of the season and you start playing your best offensive ball in December, early January. Who knows where this team can go? But I do think that there's some potential in DTR. I think him running the football It's something that they're going to utilize a ton. Him in play action is something that they're going to utilize a ton. And I think, especially over the middle of the field, that's where he has the chance to be really a special thrower at the football, especially when it comes to chunks. So we'll see what happens with DTR. We'll see what happens with this Browns team. But before the game, I just kind of wanted to talk about what I felt like would be a best, worst, and acceptable case scenario for the Cleveland Browns and DTR going forward, because I know we're all kind of concerned on some level. And I would also like to say this to some Browns fans, because I understand that people are concerned and they want this season to stay alive at all costs, and they're going to scramble and search for every solution. And that's going to include people like demanding that Joe Flacco plays the second DTR makes a mistake. I want to make this point clear. You do realize Joe Flacco going to make mistakes too, right? Like, Joe Flacco is not available at this point in his career if he's not making a ton of mistakes as well, or if he's not prone to make mistakes as well. I understand Joe Flacco is a name that we all remember, but remember, even when we recognize that name of Joe Flacco, it wasn't necessarily for the best of reasons. Like, he had that one run to get that Super Bowl MVP, but outside of that, we was talking about Joe Flacco kind of like we was talking about Andy Dalton, and that was when he was in his prime. So I understand the name of Joe Flacco makes you feel better because you associate that name with the success that the Baltimore Ravens had from 2011 to 2013. But remember, the Baltimore Ravens almost rode that Joe Flacco train to dysfunction. And if it weren't for Lamar Jackson, they would probably be down there, right? Lamar Jackson kind of shifted everything, but they were on a train to a bad place in Baltimore before Joe Flacco got benched for Lamar Jackson. Again, this is a much younger version of Joe. So I understand the eagerness to get in there, but don't let that make you forget that the fact that Joe Flacco really ain't never been it, right? At any point in his career. And I think the Browns' potential, or the Browns' pathway to having the most potential out this season, is riding it out with the rookie. Which, hey, if he gets so bad out there that it looks like it's not even good for his development to be out there, okay, you do what you got to do, and you put in Joe Flacco, and that's why Joe's there. But, DTR, he might have a rougher game or two. But I don't think that the second he has one of those, we should immediately start screaming for him to be benched, because you drafted this kid in the 5th round for a reason. You made him the backup for a reason. You clearly believe in his ability to be something. And you could potentially ruin that ability over putting in Joe Flacco, which could end up being the same level of quarterback play. Because again, if Joe Flacco were really good, he wouldn't be available at this point. And maybe I could be proven wrong on that, but I don't think that Joe Flacco or anything coming in here like the 4th quarterback is going to be the one that saves it all. I think that DTR playing well is your best bet in Cleveland if you want to make the playoffs. But let me finish on that. Y'all have a great day. Make sure y'all check out the stream today. The game's at 4, so we got time to let this video cook a little bit. But thank you guys for watching. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.